Welcome to Arlington National Cemetery's Tomb of the Unknown Soldier Centennial Commemoration Lecture Series. My name is Allison Finkelstein, and I serve as Arlington's Senior Historian. In this episode, our featured expert is Benjamin D. Brands, who works as a historian with the American Battle Monuments Commission. Ben is also a PhD candidate in history at George Mason University. He previously served as an infantry officer in the United States Army, and he has taught military history at the United States Military Academy at West Point and Oregon State University. In this episode, Brands will discuss the conception, design, and construction of the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater. He will also talk about the subsequent addition of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in the context of America's efforts to memorialize and honor its war dead. Please enjoy this episode titled Prelude to the Tomb, the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater.
Today it is impossible to think of Arlington National Cemetery without picturing the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And despite its grand scale, the amphitheater itself is almost overshadowed, conceptually at least, by the tomb that sits on its eastern plaza. But I think the amphitheater is an interesting story in its own light, and also tells a longer story of America's efforts to honor its war dead, and how the nature of how we honor our war dead has changed over the years. While it was dedicated in 1920, and the co-located tomb was initially built to house an unknown of World War I, the origins of the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater actually date to the Civil War. In the immediate aftermath of the war, communities both north and south began the practice of annually decorating the graves of Civil War veterans. This event was formalized in 1868 when General John A. Logan, the leader of the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization of Union Civil War veterans, directed that all GAR posts across the nation mark May 30th as a day of national remembrance for the Union dead. From the very beginning, this holiday was closely associated with Arlington. The first official Memorial Day in 1868 featured a procession moving from Washington into the cemetery, proceeding to Arlington House before decorating the tomb of the Civil War unknowns and other Civil War graves, and concluding with a speech by former General and future President James A. Garfield. A small amphitheater for hosting the event was built near the tomb of the Civil War unknowns in 1873. By the early 20th century, Memorial Day celebrations had vastly outgrown the space available in the old amphitheater, and a push was made to create a new, larger, and more permanent venue, once again marking the primacy of Civil War memory in the founding of Arlington and its amphitheater. This push was led by the Grand Army of the Republic. More specifically, Judge Ivory G. Kimball, the commander of the Department of the Potomac, Grand Army of the Republic, was primarily responsible for conceiving and lobbying for the construction of a new amphitheater. According to Kimball, the old amphitheater was not only inadequate for the purpose and entirely too small for the immense gathering which congregated there, but was a disgrace to the nation whose heroic dead were intended to be honored. While to some extent this criticism was overstated in an attempt to justify a new expanded amphitheater, it also perhaps reflected a change in the nature of the nation and the ways it wanted to honor its war dead since the completion of the old amphitheater. In between the opening of the amphitheater in 1873 and Judge Kimball's statements in 1903, the country had fought its first overseas war, the Spanish-American War, and gained its first overseas territories with the annexation of the Philippines and Puerto Rico. While a simple pastoral amphitheater had fit American ideas of death and honor in the 19th century, a new century and a new world power required something more grand. It took a while for the new amphitheater to gain traction. In 1903, Kimball went to the then Secretary of War Elihu Root in an attempt to convince him of the need for a new amphitheater. Root agreed and requested Congress to appropriate $5,000 to procure initial plans for such a building. This was good enough for Kimball, who, without waiting for Congress to act, approached architect Thomas Hastings to prepare tentative plans for a new amphitheater. Congress was not as enthusiastic, however, and it wasn't until 1908 that they provided legislation providing the requested appropriation of $5,000 and creating a commission to oversee the design and construction of the amphitheater. The newly formed commission wasted little time, and by February 1909, they'd approved Hastings' design and proposed a budget of $750,000. Again, Congress was slower to act, and it was not until the Public Building Act of 1913 that Congress authorized construction of the amphitheater. Still, while the act authorized construction, it did not actually appropriate the money, and it would be more than a year before Congress provided the money and allowed construction to move forward. Ground was broken on March 1, 1915. A small ceremony with no public involvement marked the occasion, with the Secretary of the Navy and Judge Kimball turning the first ceremonial spadefuls of dirt. Construction made good progress initially, with excavation completed rapidly and the brick foundations largely installed by the summer of 1915. A larger ceremony for the laying of the cornerstone was scheduled for October 1915. This ceremony was attended by the Commission, various dignitaries, and the interested public. President Wilson was invited to attend and to deliver an address, but begged off on delivering a speech due to the lack of preparation time and the press of his other duties. Wilson did, however, attend and used a ceremonial trowel to symbolically set the cornerstone. Construction was intended to be complete by February of 1917 and initially progressed rapidly. However, delays of various causes ensued as construction progressed, pushing back completion again and again. Construction was intended to be complete by February of 1917 and initially progressed rapidly. However, delays of various causes ensued as construction progressed, pushing back completion again and again. One of the main issues was with obtaining an adequate supply of marble. The Vermont Marble Company received the subcontract for producing all of the exterior marble for the amphitheater, and they quickly fell behind. With the building almost entirely clad with marble, this imposed inevitable delays on overall construction, as there was very little that could be done with no marble on hand. The Vermont Marble Company made several excuses for their delays, including untimely delivery of the architectural drawings. However, the major problem seems to have been that the marble was required to be of an unusually high quality, and that it was being drawn from a new quarry that was not fully operational or efficiently run at the start of construction. Marble shortages were not the only delay the amphitheater faced. On occasion, construction was held up due to the failure to coordinate work from multiple subcontractors. For example, in November 1916, Tiffany Studios complained that the bronze main door, as well as the frames for the windows in the chapel, had been waiting for 5 months for hardware, which was being provided by a different contractor who had only been awarded a contract in September of 1916. The delay in this hardware contract was largely due to the government's requirement that all subcontracts required a bidding process before the award, a process that imposed significant delays on various portions of the construction. Other delays were imposed by changes in plans for the building, such as Hastings' desire to find a different option for the floor of the amphitheater proper that would be more in keeping with the building's majesty than simple concrete. Construction only commenced on the original design when no other option within the budget could be found, and the contractor notified the architects that construction must commence immediately or the laborers would be lost to other jobs. Outside forces also impeded construction. Obviously, as construction consumed almost 5 years, there were significant delays due to weather, even in as temperate an area as Washington, D.C. Additionally, as the work stretched on, the U.S. was drawn inexorably into the First World War. Even before American entry, labor, and especially skilled labor, had begun to be increasingly difficult to find as American industry geared up to provide the materials necessary for the Allies to fight a modern industrial war. Once America entered the war, this became an even greater issue, with laborers siphoned off by both war industries and the armed forces. Additionally, wartime restrictions on transportation made moving material to the site difficult. Although as the cemetery was run by the Army, they were able to request shipping priorities and eventually get the material delivered. These labor difficulties were further complicated by several strikes and labor disputes, such as when the amphitheater's painters went on strike in September of 1919. Finally, on May 15, 1920, the completed Arlington Memorial Amphitheater was dedicated in an elaborate ceremony. A grand parade, led by the 80-year-old former commanding general of the Army, Nelson A. Miles, proceeded from the National Mall across the 17th Street Bridge and into the cemetery. The parade contained both units of the Army as well as veterans. According to an official report, the parade made a most beautiful and impressive sight. Within the ranks were gray and grizzled veterans of the Grand Army of the Republic in their suits of blue, groups of veterans of the Spanish War in their suits of blue and gray, and the younger veterans of our most recent war in their khaki. Following the parade, a ceremony was held in the amphitheater, with speeches delivered by the Secretaries of War and the Navy, the leaders of the Grand Army of the Republic and the United Spanish War veterans, and the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. A letter from President Wilson, who was too ill to attend, was also read. As completed, the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater is a marble bow art structure composed of two main elements. The amphitheater itself is an open amphitheater inscribed by a monumental Corinthian colonnade. The amphitheater itself is an open amphitheater inscribed by a monumental Corinthian colonnade with a large two-level stage on the east side of the amphitheater and porticos on the north, south, and west. There is a small chapel beneath the stage. The exterior of the colonnade is inscribed with the names of 44 American battles from the Revolution to the Spanish-American War, and panels flanking the stage are inscribed with the names of 13 famous generals and 13 admirals from those same wars. On the stage side of the amphitheater, there is a two-story reception hall building. As originally designed, the main floor of the building was to be a reception hall, with two trophy rooms on the second floor, and kitchens and storage on the basement level. Today, the main floor is used as an exhibit space, with offices in the lower level, and the trophy rooms are unused and closed to the public. The amphitheater and reception hall building are joined at the rear of the stage by a grand staircase, blurring the separation between the two elements of the structure. Sculptural friezes and panels throughout borrow freely from Greek and Roman architecture, as well as common symbols of America, such as eagles. While the amphitheater was dedicated in 1920, the world and the United States had changed since construction began. Almost immediately, there was a movement to add on to the amphitheater with the installation of a tomb of the unknown soldier to honor the sacrifices of a new generation of American soldiers who had fought for the first time in Europe. The eastern plaza of the amphitheater provided an obvious location for the tomb. On March 4, 1921, less than a year after the dedication of the amphitheater, Congress passed a joint resolution allowing for the selection of an unknown soldier from the American Expeditionary Forces of World War I. Due to the desire to entomb the unknown on Armistice Day 1921, there was not enough time to design a proper tomb before the funeral ceremony. The unknown was therefore initially buried under a very simple tomb set into the stairs on the eastern plaza. In the period immediately after the entombment of the unknown, it was generally assumed that the final tomb would be completed by Thomas Hastings in his role as the architect of the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater. Hastings began to work on a design as early as 1921 and even had a plaster model of his design, a heavily engraved cenotaph, installed over the tomb for a time. However, against his vehement protest, it was instead decided to conduct a competition to choose the design for the final tomb. The design competition was held in 1927, and the submission by architect Lorimer Rich and sculptor Thomas Hudson Jones, both themselves veterans of World War I, was selected. Construction began in 1929, and the tomb was completed and unveiled without ceremony in 1932. In addition to the tomb itself, Rich's plan encompassed the completion of the eastern approaches to the tomb and amphitheater, adding a redone granite plaza, a monumental staircase leading to the tomb, and a long grass-covered mall bordered by walkways and an alley of trees. At its eastern terminus, the mall was marked by another granite plaza with a decorative fountain. While the tomb represents an unplanned addition to the memorial landscape of the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater as originally conceived, the modern array of the amphitheater and its role and method in honoring American war dead has also been significantly shaped by the absence of portions of the original design. Together, these absences and additions help reveal the changing ways in which America viewed and honored its war dead. As originally conceived, Thomas Hastings envisioned the amphitheater as having specific elements honoring the wars and heroes of America up to 1915. These are represented by the inscriptions of battles and leaders from American wars, from the Revolution to the Spanish-American War. However, as the amphitheater was intended to honor all American veterans, he also intended the amphitheater to be updated to honor future wars as well. Specifically, when discussing the plan with Congress, Hastings expressed the idea that the colonnade of the amphitheater could be used for memorials, and that the names of those who had served the country but were buried elsewhere could be inscribed on the amphitheater so they could still be honored at Arlington. No such tablets or monuments were ever installed, however, partially due to confusion over who had the authority to approve them, and partially over the desire to avoid the politics of choosing who got in and who didn't. It is also possible that the rapid installation of the tomb of the unknown soldier discouraged any addition of memorials to individuals by establishing the precedent of the amphitheater as a place to honor American war dead generically and symbolically rather than specifically. Similar concerns influenced another, even larger alteration from the architect's original intent for the building. Hastings designed a basement course of the amphitheater arcade as a crypt where the distinguished men of the country could be honorably entombed as part of the memorial environment of the amphitheater. Today, the crypt remains closed to the public, unfinished and empty. No distinguished general, or even lowly private, was ever entombed there. Partially, as above, this can be explained by the desire to keep the amphitheater dedicated to American dead as a whole, rather than to specific heroes, a concept appealing to the democratic and egalitarian nature of American culture. More specific concerns also militated against the entombment of distinguished dead in the crypts, including the necessity of getting the permission of kin to move those to be entombed, the desire of the spouses of those entombed to be buried with them, and the general cultural distaste for disinterring the dead once honorably buried. There was also the example of General John J. Pershing, commander of the AEF, and the first major military figure to die after the completion of the amphitheater. While some called for his to be the first burial in the crypt, he himself, before his death, clearly specified the site for his grave and his desire to be buried with his men. There also may have been a concern that the process of deciding who deserved burial in the limited space within the crypts would quickly have become acrimonious. While built of marble and designed to be a permanent memorial, the purpose and message of the amphitheater have changed along with America over the last 100 years. Once primarily a site of remembrance associated with the specific wars engraved on its arcade, the amphitheater and the adjacent tomb have come to commemorate all U.S. conflicts and war dead. The grand triumphant architecture of the amphitheater, celebrating American power and inscribed with the names of great men, has been, in many ways, eclipsed by the stark simplicity of the tomb and its focus on the honor and remembrance of an everyman, a universal symbol of the sacrifice of the common soldier. The focus of the site has thus shifted with America's views of the proper way to honor its wars and war dead, from the glory of the generals and admirals inscribed on either side of the stage to the sacrifice of the common soldier, represented at Arlington in both their individuality and their commonality by row upon row of white headstones, and above all, by the honor paid to the unknowns entombed on the eastern plaza of the Arlington Memorial Amphitheater.